Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you had a great weekend. Hard to believe that it is a new work week already, and we are looking at some clouds across Acadiana right now. We had those rains earlier this morning. Fortunately, most of the area escaped any severe weather, even though we did have a severe thunderstorm warning, or watch rather, that was posted during the overnight hours. That went ahead and expired without any troubles across Acadiana. We're left with some cloud cover, which is helping to keep our temperatures down just a few degrees. We are going to talk a lot about the tropics. There's really not much going on right now, but at least one model has been trying to stay a little bit busy going out about 10 days to 2 weeks or so. And also going to talk a little bit about what is shared on social media, what you should or shouldn't be sharing on social media, and what you really need to look out for when you're seeing some of the extreme social media posts and different articles that are either on social media or on the internet. So we'll talk about that. And I'll give you a little bit of an example here coming up in just a little bit. But first, we've got a lot of cloud cover. There are some peaks of sunshine, though. Temperature hovering at 82. It does feel like 87. It's pretty sticky out there thanks to this morning's rain. So those dew points are running in the lower 70s and the humidity is high. At least we have a little bit of a breeze out there. And looking at the traffic cams, there's not much rain falling at this point. There might be a few puddles left over from this morning. But all in all, it's a pretty easygoing day across Acadiana with little or no big weather to really talk about. So let's real quick look at the radar locally. And most of the rain has ended in the Acadiana region, although it looks like we still got a little bit of action here down over parts of St. Mary Parish. We'll go ahead and pull the radar out of Hammond. You can see there's a little bit of light rain there. And then most of the other action is out here a little bit farther off toward the east. But if we look at the big radar and kind of show you everything that's going on, you got some big thunderstorms over the Tennessee Valley, the Florida Panhandle, going through parts of Alabama. And there's a little bit of a disturbance that's starting to get its act together over Texas. That might visit us as we head into Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But there is a look at the satellite image. Part of the reason we're going to see a little more unsettled weather here over the next several days is a bit of a trough of low pressure that's in the upper levels. And you can kind of see that little bit of a spin there. So the trough actually comes all the way down into this region. So there's a little bit more instability in place. So some of those daytime heating, some of that daytime heating could get some extra thunderstorms going a little later this afternoon. So leaving 50% in the rain column, even though I believe most of the rain is over for the day, but just a little bit of daytime heating could pop up one or two showers later on this afternoon. So do keep that in mind. There's a look at the Gulf waters as far as our waves and wind directions, rather wave height and direction. The arrows on there are the direction of the wave movement, not necessarily the winds, but we are seeing our winds today out of the southwest at about 10 to 15 knots and seas 2 to 3 feet. So winds and seas, of course, are always higher around scattered showers and thunderstorms. But there's the 7-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center for the Atlantic Basin, and they're saying that no tropical activity is expected here over the next couple of weeks. But as most of us who do follow all the computer models daily and run after run after run, we all know the GFS has been trying to spin something in the Gulf or the Western Caribbean now basically since hurricane season has started. And there were several crazy outcomes or forecasts on the GFS over the course of the weekend. And you get those social media folks that want to, throw in the worst case scenario on and get people scared. And one of the things I want to tell you is the first thing you want to look for when you see some of those graphics that are posted is make sure you look at the timestamp or at least see how old the article or the post is. I mean, I don't know how your Facebook or your, Twitter feeds run, but there's a lot of stuff that I end up getting on my Facebook feed that's several days old already. So do keep that in mind. Make sure you're getting it from a valuable source, and also make sure you're looking at the timestamp of some of these graphics and see if they're actually any good anymore for that matter. So there's a look at the Gulf satellite. We don't have a lot happening there. Really some fair skies, some showers and thunderstorms that have pushed into the offshore waters during the early part of the day. We do have a bit of a flare-up of thunderstorm activity here off the Nicaraguan and Costa Rican coast. You can see the moisture that's building there. That's kind of part of an upper trough that's going to scoot a little bit farther to the west, and that could be a pretty significant rain event for parts of Central America. And then some of the energy as it drifts its way over toward the Pacific might have a chance for some tropical development there. Meanwhile, over the Caribbean, again, there's that upper trough that's bringing the rains there off the Panamanian coast. We've got some fairly strong trade winds that are moving across the Caribbean. And you can also notice there's quite a bit of Saharan dust that's flowing into the Gulf, or rather into the Caribbean as well. Now, there's also a bit of a flare up of some rain and thunderstorms here off the northern coast of South America. Some of that rain's going to move over toward Trinidad and Tobago and will probably graze the northern coast of South America. But at this point, that's a little bit too far to the south to get anything really going. But we do have a couple of tropical waves that are out in the Atlantic, and one is right here, about halfway across. You got another one that's starting to come across the African continent, and those are going to continue to drift off to the west. I will say, though, that most models aren't really playing with those tropical waves out in the central part of the Atlantic. And usually that part of the Atlantic starts to get a little more active going farther down the road into the hurricane season. We tend to look a little closer to home, the Gulf, the Western Caribbean, the Western Atlantic for development during the early part of the hurricane season. And then things open up for business a little bit farther out to the east. But I did want to point out the Pacific satellite because we've got two systems that are out there. We've got one, this is Barbara. This is a hurricane. So this is the Pacific's first hurricane of the season, and it's kind of drifting off toward the west. We think it's peaked out. It winds at 75 miles per hour, a category 1, and it's going to go ahead and move into some of the colder waters and eventually kind of wash out. Cosme is a tropical storm here, and that will also continue to move off toward the west. It is forecast to become a Category 1 hurricane briefly and then push out into the colder waters of the Pacific Ocean. And the Pacific might even have more action there south of Mexico. Remember, hurricane season in the Pacific side there starts on May the 15th. So they're almost a month in. So having 3 named storms so far really isn't that unusual. But the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook, and we're going to get an update on this tomorrow afternoon. So I won't be able to bring it to you until Wednesday's Let's Talk Tropics. But you could see going through the end of this week and into early next week, things seem to be a little more active there over the western part of the Caribbean and the Gulf, but really the Pacific side stays with most of the action and going into week 3 as well. It'll be interesting to see how this changes, though, as we get the new update tomorrow afternoon. And of course, I'll bring that to you on Wednesday. It comes in a little bit too late for Let's Talk Tropics, but there's your water temperatures. Plenty warm for anything to develop over the Gulf, the Caribbean, the Western Atlantic, and even the central part of the Atlantic. So anytime you've got water temperatures that are above 26 and a half, so on the color range, that is going to represent anything that's basically yellow and brighter. So here's your 26 and a half line right there. So anything that goes up that way is able to sustain tropical weather activity based on temperature alone. And those water temperatures are above normal across the Gulf and much of the Caribbean and the Western Atlantic, but there are a few cooler than average spots that are out there. But don't let that fool you, because even though it's cooler than average, it's still warm enough to create tropical activity with those 80-degree waters. And then the tropical cyclone heat potential continues to build there as those very warm waters go deep below the surface. So tropical activity that can get into this area and perhaps be able to tap into that heat content. If you get the right kind of atmospheric conditions, you can get a tropical system to develop quite rapidly. And a lot of times when you have high heat content and you get a tropical system with just the right atmospheric conditions, rapid intensification is usually the case there. So again, that western part of the Caribbean is a pretty likely area where you're going to see tropical development during the month of June. There's also a chance something could get strong if it were to develop there over that high ocean heat content. Now, there's still a lot that's inhibiting tropical development, and one of that is wind shear. And you can see virtually all of the Caribbean. Showed you those trade winds and the dust out there. It was pretty solid from the east to the west across the Caribbean, and that map right there confirms it. And you've got moderate to high wind shear around the Yucatan Peninsula, much of the Bay of Campeche, and the western part of the Gulf. The only place where you've got some weaker wind shear there is from Cuba up to the Florida Panhandle and then maybe just east of the Bahamas. But at this point, there really isn't anything in that region to take advantage of those lower wind shears. The Saharan dust continues to make its way, another huge plume coming off of the African continent. You can see it streams all the way across the Atlantic and into the eastern Caribbean. It covers much of the western Atlantic around the Bahamas, and we've got a pretty good mess of Saharan dust over the Gulf too. So fortunately, we're seeing some pretty sunrises and sunsets due to that extra particle material that's in the atmosphere, but it also does choke out tropical systems. So the more Saharan dust we have, the better we are when it comes to no tropical systems. So let's go ahead and go through the 4 different global models first. And this is where I want to talk about trying to make sure you know the timestamp. And I'm going to have to remove the top title here real quick so that I can show you the timestamp. And at least on this particular graphic here, initialized 12Z June 9th, 2025. So 12Z is Zulu time. It's what they call universal time. So it's 5 hours ahead of us. So right now it's 12:10. So universal time is 5:10. So that would be 17:10. So this was produced early this morning, and you can see the date there, June the 9th. And as you go into the latter part of this, you do see a little bit of development there, maybe in Central America, but that's on day 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this, just stop this on the final graphic. Let me put that title back up there real quick. But there's what the final run of this graphic looks like going out 10 days. So again, there's the initialization, which was today, and this is when it's valid. So this would be Thursday, 12Z. So that's 7 o'clock in the morning. So you subtract 5 hours from that. So 7 o'clock in the morning, Thursday, is when the GFS thinks there will be a tropical system on the Nicaraguan coast. Over the weekend, there were some blips here and here and here, and even some really strong solutions, perhaps even a hurricane in the Atlantic or in the Gulf waters. But some of the media outlets and social media folks have cherry-picked certain models out there. And one of them that I saw was with a local media outlet that's here in Lafayette. And it was written yesterday, and it showed the graphic with a tropical system in the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico. But the thing is the graphic never showed the timestamp. It didn't tell you what day the model was run. It also didn't tell you when it was valid or what day that represented. But fortunately, on that particular article, there was a link in there that linked it to the latest GFS, which actually kind of confirms what I'm telling you. So when you look at the image, it looks like there's a huge thing that would be coming into the Gulf. But when you actually click the link, it takes you to the most recent model, which is what I'm showing you right here. And you can clearly see going out 10 days, there are no tropical systems in the Gulf water, maybe a blip in Central America. And this is also 10 days out. So you really got to watch where you're getting your information. Make sure the timestamp is on there. Make sure you know what time this represents and what day this represents. And also look at those posts and make sure the date on the post isn't like 4 or 5 days ago. So again, just to be a little bit weather smarter and to kind of filter out the garbage that's out there, make sure you do that and you'll become a better forecaster and know what's happening in real time. Yeah, latest Euro model, again, this one goes out. It goes out more than 10 days, but I'm only showing you the 10 days here. And you can see there's a little bit of a moisture buildup in Central America toward the end of the loop, but there's nothing definitive when it comes to any tropical weather. And the Canadian model is virtually the same. You got a big Bermuda high that's out over the Atlantic, which shoves your winds westward across the Caribbean, and then they tend to curve northward toward the Gulf. But the Canadian model isn't showing anything either, and the Icon model only goes out a week, so it only goes out 7 days. So it's not going to give us the same kind of information that the Euro and the GFS can give. Euro goes out 15 days every other run. GFS goes 16 days out every single run, so we can't quite see as far out with the Icon model on that. But just a reminder, some of these models update 4 times a day. So if you see a story or a post that's a couple of days old, you can guarantee that the model that they're looking at is 2, 3, maybe even 4 days old. And it's probably cherry-picked to show you the most extreme case. So try to filter those out, and that'll help you out with your preparations over the course of the hurricane season. Real quick, I'm just going to go over areas that are the normal regions where we see tropical development during the month of June. Now, it can still occur outside that blue area, but most of our tropical systems, I would put maybe 3/4 or more, will develop in this blue area during the month of June. And June is a relatively quiet month. So is July, but things really start to ramp up as we get into August and September, which is why I'm telling you to do your planning right now when everything is nice and quiet. And I gave y'all some homework on Friday and asked maybe if you could take one line of this graphic and get those things put together. And if you did, then you're well ahead of most folks in Acadiana as being hurricane ready. But batteries, flashlights, water, and non-perishable food, stock up your first aid kit. Make sure you've got medicine and where you would get medicine if you had to go out of town. Personal hygiene and cleaners. Make sure you take pictures of your IDs, insurance, important papers, and make sure those are digital. Take the papers with you if you have to evacuate, but at least you have a backup on your phone. And then, of course, it's always good to have a basic tool set, some entertainment for the kids, and pet supplies as well. If you get all of those things in the next couple of weeks, again, you're going to be ahead of most folks, and all of these items are available on the store shelves. And most likely, with hurricane season last year and a winter storm this year, you might actually have some of these still laying around in a kit somewhere. So check that. You might be a little bit farther ahead than you really know you are. So that's a look at our Let's Talk Tropics for today. If you do like this video, and please subscribe to my channel and also turn on those notifications. I do this show every day, every weekday, live at noon. So if you got those notifications on, it'll give you a little reminder that I'm going to be live, but it'll also give you a reminder that I do Acadiana Weather Today, which is a short morning chat on your upcoming weather conditions. And that's every weekday morning at 7 o'clock. That is just posted as a video. This is actually a live stream, but you can also hear my forecast on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And please follow my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the morning.